part 1 on how to edit those viral videos.
Some of this can definitely be reframed into creating killer micro content. Just ask, can this get the attention if it's muted?
Keep in mind, quality of the message over quality of the production 100% of the time.
Right now, the human element has to be a must. It cannot just leave everything for AI, but check on what the output of AI is.
That's what's going to separate it from decent or average to really good and exceptional.
You don't really need all the technology. You can do it honestly with your phone, recording 4K, and that's gonna give you plenty of space to play with digital zooms and crop it in certain ways.
We're thinking about publishing this professional looking sounding thing that then we have to avoid and use these tools to mask the production that we have in hand at the time. It's okay, address it head on. Be like, hey guys, guess what? If you guys support the channel or if you guys support the podcast, we're going to be able to get better microphones, right? Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Content is Profit. We are back after a fun weekend.
I feel like I haven't recorded in a while.
You feel,
I feel like I've been missing.
I mean, you are feeling right because you haven't.
But people don't know that. Or do they?
LD here carrying the team in Content is Profit. Let me know. Are you enjoying the episodes? Say yes. Say yes. But anyway.
Point for best, bro. I will give you that one.
Yes, but I think this is coming out after a couple of interviews that we did, one in studio and one with Joe Pelusi. So if you haven't catch up onto those episodes, go ahead and check them out. They're incredible. And,
I totally forgot we did the interview with Joe. It was an amazing interview, but there's just been so much going on.
Last week was a hectic week. We were in Atlanta for the Copa America opener. Dream come true. Watching some real football there at 70,000 people in that stadium. But that's the topic for a different podcast, which we'll talk maybe.
Yeah, tangent alert.
But today we actually bring you an episode that I've had in this list for quite a while. I caught up to this YouTube channel, one of our Hubspot, creators, partners. He's incredible. He was a YouTube employee at some point, and he brings incredible insights and has conversations with the best creators, I think, up to date. So he has a video breaking down how to edit viral videos, and I thought it was good. I don't think you've seen the video, but I took some notes and I
saw the intro. I just saw the intro of the video.
Okay. Yep. And on our side, obviously, that we're constantly looking for tools to either summarize, help us, leverage the content. And I was testing one that we use quite a bit, and it gave me an output. And then from that output, we're kind of gonna go and share our thoughts on some of this. So I think we're gonna split this in two parts. This is part 1 on how to edit those viral videos from the channel. What's the channel?
Jon Youshaei, something like that. It's a very difficult last name to pronounce.
From Jon. Thank you, Jon. All right. So the first topic here, right? And again, a little perspective, right, for you creating. For those tuning into Content is Profit, we do podcast editing, video and audio. We do micro clips. We've done it for the last 4 years, right? And YouTube, full disclosure, is not our strong suit, right? We don't create content for YouTube specifically. We create podcasts that go on YouTube. And again, this is something new that also YouTube has been, working on. So for context, what we're sharing here are tips that Jon has discovered throughout their interviews, and they create, to go through that. And there's some things here that we might do. There's some things here that we're not doing. Yeah. There's some things here that we might be doing.
So he says these are 7 tips to edit killer YouTube videos. I will say, after going through these tips, some of this can definitely be reframed into creating killer micro content, and then we're going to give our opinion as we go through some of this.
Absolutely. Okay, so number 1 is vary your perspective, right? So not only on the messaging side, right, but also visually, right? Shoot from different angles, close up, low angle, to do the video a little bit more interesting, right? Use a mix of wide shots for context and close-up shots for emotion. And then if you're limited by the footage, zoom in at least 170% on a shot to create variety, right? So
so can I go here real quick?
Yeah.
So I would think most people will say, well, I don't have a multi-camera setup to do these things, right? It's you don't really need one. Like it said at the very end, with a simple camera, just like we're doing, you can do digital zooms, you can do digital framings, right? You can, out of this wider shot where there's me and my brother, you can just cut up and put me as the subject, and you can do a digital close-up where it's just my face and we're talking about something very emotional and some music in the background, right, etc. So you don't really need all the technology. You can do it honestly with your phone, recording 4K in your phone, and that's going to give you plenty of space to play with digital zooms and crop it in certain ways. Something I do think is very important to understand, specifically, obviously for creators, but if you're editing your own videos, then for you, but for your editor, is to understand when to zoom in. Because I've seen a lot of clips that they're just zooming in randomly and changing the scene multiple times because they believe that by changing the scene, I'm going to create a new pattern interrupt, right? That's like, oh, pattern interrupt, I reset it every 8 seconds. Like, not necessarily that, right? Like, you can use some sort of jump cuts to hide mistakes here and there, right? Some certain cuts that you want to make.
Yeah.
But also, you want to zoom in maybe very specific statements, right? Like when you want people to pay attention, get a little bit closer, right? That implies if we're a real person and I'm telling you something important, I'm gonna lean in, right? I'm gonna get closer to you. We're gonna lean in and get closer, right? And that is the same effect digitally. Yeah. Like we don't have obviously that personal bubble when we're watching videos online, but you can create that by doing this zooming in. So if I want to say something very important to you, like right now, this is the moment right now, right? You zoom in, I get closer to you, and I deliver my message. And then it goes back into a wider shot, into showing the context of what is going on. So I think those are some key elements to understand. And it's not just about making multiple cuts and zoom ins and zoom outs for pattern interrupt setup.
I want to relate this to obviously the 6 levers that we've talked about, your creation, obviously your message, and on the creation side we talk a lot about your equipment, the tools that you might have at the moment, right? So obviously the first one here is to shoot from different angles, right? If you're lucky enough and you have multiple cameras, great, that works great. But at the same time, don't forget that you can still use digital tools to be able to support this and help you. And I think this is where a lot of companies today are leaning a lot into AI, right? Like right now, just before this call, I was discussing with our main editor how, there's this tool that can help you do the zoom ins, right? And one of the questions that we encounter is like, okay, what just Fonzie just said is like, how do we use those zoom ins or those pattern interrupts or those, engagement, techniques to enhance your footage, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the human process needs to happen, right? So those tools can help you get that to like a 80%, right? It might help you speed up the process a little bit more, but then make sure that you have a human process in place to be like, okay, does this pass the quality control based on the frameworks and based on the principles that we're utilizing for this type of footage?
Let me share a little bit technical example of what you just mentioned. So, help visualize the person who's doing this. So this software, you will click add zooms, right? And you give him a segment of the video and it will scan the transcript. Mm-hmm. What I'm guessing is looking for are for certain keywords to see, when is it good to punch in, right? With a zoom, and then it will add the zoom. Now, the human process after it adds the zoom is not just, okay, cool, it added the zoom there, that's good. No, you got to check if the moment that the AI chose is actually the right one in that segment. But the advantage, I will say, I find myself more often than not when I use that tool, moving the zoom to somewhere else in the segment that I wanted. But the advantage is that the tool will do a lot of the technical work for you, right? It will create, and this is a little bit too technical, you don't really need to do this if you don't edit your videos, but it will add a specific layer and then add keyframes for camera movement for you, which it can take you, let's say 10 minutes, right? 5 to 10 minutes to create certain type of keyframes. Yeah. If you compound that on all the videos that you're creating, it's a big time saved for you. So the fact that it's creating that for you, and then all you gotta do is like, well, maybe the segment that it chose is not the right one. Let me move this 5 seconds earlier, and now I have the segment that I believe, is more benefited to get a punch in. Perfect, right? At the end of the time, it's saving you a lot of time. So that's where I see value in those tools as well. always, right now, the human element has to be a must. It cannot just leave everything for AI, but check on what the output of AI is.
That's what's going to separate it from decent or average to really good and exceptional, right? It's that human element. And if you go to the top shows, there's always a human behind the editing. So these are some things that you can start trying it out. You know, there's softwares like Descript, for example, that we use 24/7, you know, in part of our process from value index to sometimes the final edits that will allow you to do some of that. If you have any questions, let us know. We have, open office hours. Just send us a quick DM. We're happy to jump on and kind of walk you through that process. All right. Number 2, pass the mute test, right? Ensure the first 5 seconds of the videos are engaging without audio. Add captivating B-roll to showcase the best parts of your video. And test the first 5 seconds without audio to see if it compels viewers to click. Now, before Fonzie, you go. I know that you have probably a lot of thoughts on this one, but
you saw my highlights.
I freaking love this, right? And I think this is something that, on our side of the process, we need to start implementing more and more. Again, for context, our show has always been audio first. Yep. And I think, we play it a little bit with different types of intros and the music and the energy and different things. But I think we need to be more aware of something like this now that we're producing videos. So I'm excited to kind of experiment. So now, what are your thoughts on this, Fons?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the ones that I highlighted was exactly the same, right? Ensure the first 5 seconds of the video are engaging with the audio. It reminds me of a clip that we saw from this speaker coach. I forgot his name, but he was talking on how to improve your vocalization when you're speaking. And he said first record a video of you saying something and then put it in mute and look at yourself. Do you look good? Do you look confident when you're talking? Then he said put the audio and put the phone down, so don't look at the visuals but only listen to the audio. Does it sound confident? Does it sound good, right?
Yeah.
And then look at the whole package, right? And if those elements individually can stand, the criticism, like, oh, he looks good without me knowing what he's saying, it's a point forward, right? Yeah. You move forward. And it's the same with the hook. I think that is very, very important. And I think that is a great test for people to do, right? Just ask, can this get the attention if it's muted? Because a lot of people might have to tap on their phone to start watching the video. They might have to click on, depending on where you are, consuming. So I think doing that test is incredible. And I think that is one of the challenges for clips that come from podcasts.
Video podcasts.
Right? Video podcasts. It's the fact 100%. That you're already into the conversation and you might not have those 5 seconds for the hook. So you might want to create an independent hook, right? Which obviously would add a little bit more to the production, right? We've tried some of those elements. We already have the videos on our phone, and before we can publish them, we're like, oh, let me record a 10-second hook for this, and then pretty much stitch the video to the new hook that I'm creating.
Yeah, I think part of this coming from the podcasting world, right? Podcasting is almost like an audio vehicle that has been adapting to the video side. But today, I think most people think about podcasting as a video platform. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, how can we visually excite people about a conversation, right? And I think, keep in mind, quality of the message over quality of the production 100% of the time. So maybe sometimes even the conversation of what's being said, it's probably enough to move the needle forward in a type of content like a podcast, right? Because you obviously have to maintain the attention for a lot longer, right? Now, this video that we saw with these tips, a lot of his type of video are they're interviews, but at the same time, they have a YouTube vlogging style, that they've developed, and they use these elements to captivate, and they're very effective. So keep in mind, we're going to link the video that we grabbed this information from right below, so you can click it and go check them out how they do it, right? So it's like, okay, where am I today? And then what are some of the elements that I can grab in order to improve your process? It doesn't have to be for your next video. You can start implementing these little things here and there, because a lot of it has to do with your preparation before the episode, right? Maybe you have that B-roll footage already selected because you already know what you're going to talk about. Sometimes you might not even know what's going on, right? We have a different project called the Football Show, right? Our passion project that we launched last week.
Yep.
And we recorded in Atlanta a little episode. It was about 8 minutes long at the top of the hotel that we were staying with the stadium in the background. And we referenced some of the footage that we filmed when we're walking throughout the city, right? So that's a spot where we can maybe put some of that footage. Maybe that footage goes to the intro with some exciting music and to captivate people. So again, what are some creative ways that you can do it that also fit within your capacity and your team's capacity?
Yeah, I'll say this: we've used B-roll with clients, right, and in both, and for our own content. I think B-roll, it's a
tricky subject.
It's a tricky one, right? Because a lot of people go and they look for B-roll that is not very relevant, or is that kind of like splash B-roll, right? I forgot the copyright free.
The copyright free.
Yeah, copyright free B-roll that is just not very appealing. Like, it's a stock footage, right? Like you look at it and you're like, oh, this is stock footage. But for example, we have a client with a very impactful story that he has footage from when he was a child,
after a big accident.
Right? And like, we've been able to use that footage as part of the hook when he's speaking, because his videos, like, this is a talking head video. But when you match the message with now those B-roll clips, you expand the message to a whole different level, because now people are not just hearing it, they're seeing it, right? You're engaging more senses, right? Which is the advantage of B-roll, right? Is how can I illustrate what I'm saying with my words? Yeah. So usually with stock footage, you can illustrate to a certain degree, but again, it's very stocky.
It's not personalized enough. And at this point, you jump into brand elements, or what's the visual aspect, right? Like, what's even things like style of footage.
Yeah, the style of how you present the footage.
Exactly. So it could be the same footage, but it might be recorded not from a phone, but from a high quality camera with a filter, right? That's going to look and feel very different than just phone footage. So a lot of elements to, keep in mind. But again, if you're doing your own editing, you can still grab some of these elements, and there's nothing wrong with stock footage. It's a level up from not having stock footage for sure. And you can put in, again, we talk about frequency and consistency in your content. How can you use those reps? So maybe instead of editing a full 1 hour episode like that, maybe you test a run with, shorter 8 to 10 minute episodes, and you start implementing these elements to see how it goes, right? And I think, going back to our passion project and, the episode that I published, to where how do you fight burnout, right? One of my points there was start a passion project on the side. What that did was it started allowing us to think differently about the content that we're producing, also for Content is Profit. So for example, those 2 first episodes that they're about 8 minutes long, now we have the capacity and the time to try new things. So can we do that here, for example? Can we do a version of that, whether we're not encapsulating, we need to do a 1 hour episode?
Yeah.
We don't need to. We get to, but at the same time, maybe we can try something different for the other thing. So again, pass the mute test. I think we touched a lot of other elements, right? And I don't know if you want to go on, or you already talked about this last highlight that you had.
I'm gonna throw this. I think this would be add value for those that are creating content on a podcast, like we do. It's not something we have done, but it's something we have discussed on doing, which is having certain props in here that we can use. We've talked about, the money gun, or we've talked about like signs or whatever. And I think those, right, first are obviously entertaining. You're adding that entertainment value in there a little bit. But I think then your editor can use those moments to, get the hook or whatever. Right. Yeah. So again,
we use
just a little extra.
We use a lot of the soccer analogies or the football analogies, right? Like in our case, it's like, how do you provide a pass that's already setting up your player, right?
Yeah.
So it's like us as creators, how can we set up an environment, where our editor has a lot of tools to then play with, where we might spark some creativity, right? And again, Mava, to you, just let us know, talk to your editor. Like, what are some things that can be exciting? And then, make sure that there's a lot of communication back and forth. So, it's a team sport.
Yeah.
And then the third one, which, we're probably going to close this episode with, is, clean your audio, right? Use Adobe's enhanced speech tool at a maximum of 40% to clean audio. Apply an equalizer to enhance audio quality, cut lows, drop mid-range, boost highs. Again, this is very highly technical, but I'll give you a version of for starters. And then Fonzie's, there's a Fonzie's take here.
Fonzie's note. I put it there. Fonzie's note. All right, so I have a little bit of a battle with the enhanced tool. I think it is a jail-free card in a sense for people that don't know much about audio, right? They get some crappy audio recorded somehow, and then they're like, oh, I'm just gonna put it through here and it's gonna fix it. Now is, you can tell, it's very easy to spot what audios are being cleaned up with that. It has like this metallic sound, and I understand why the tip is don't do it at a maximum of 40%, right? Because again, it starts getting that metallic sound.
Also, for context, this was put in here by somebody that has really good audio equipment when they go record these videos.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. So let me finish my thought out here, right? So don't use it as a kind of like jail-free card, like, oh, I got bad audio, I'm going to put it through here or whatever. Like, my tip for you, if you don't know much about audio, right? Like, you might not know what cut lows, drop mid-range, and boost highs means, right? You don't know what equalizer, compression, like, you don't know all these tools, right? It might be a little bit overwhelming for you. My recommendation for you is to always look to record as close to the final product as you can. Of course, there's going to be some settings depending on the content that you're recording that you might be, in public. So, well, if you're in public, then you might need to invest a little bit on a decent microphone, that is going to compress the sound, right, for you, and maybe it's going to cut the noise, right, from outside. So, again, important. If you are in a controlled environment, don't put your microphone 30 feet away from you. Try to put it closer to your mouth, and then again, record as close to the end product as you want. And I say the same thing with video, right? Record as close as the end product that you want, because that's just gonna make it way easier for your editor. So again, you can dive into learning all these technical aspects of audio editing, and they're going to be beneficial because then if you get bad audio, you're going to know exactly what needs to be done, right? Or your editor is going to know exactly what needs to be done. Always a benefit to have more knowledge about a specific topic. But if you're like, I don't really want to learn about that, well, then get yourself in a good position so you don't have to be using this, AI enhancers, and then you just sound like a robot. And honestly, me personally, this is a very personal point. When I hear something like that it sounds very robotic, it's like, it's a little bit of a turnoff, right? Like, we've had situations where like some of our clients' audio is not like that, and then the editor, abuses this tool, and when he gets back to us, I'm like, this doesn't sound good. Like, sure, we can actually leave a little bit of the echo that they had and make it a little bit better without having to use this tool. Yeah. But that's just lazy editing, drop it in here, boost it. And
my hot take on this one is if you're going to use it, low percentage, right? Like it says 40% or less. But also, at the end of the day, I think a recording without it and you addressing it head on is way better than utilizing it and hiding it. Good take. Hey. I love it. Hey,
address the elephant in the room.
Yeah, address it. Be like, hey guys, in today's episode, guess what? We're recording for a different microphone. It might sound a little bit different, but that doesn't make the content worse, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it makes it way better. So, for example, for our passion, project with the football show, we recorded at the top of the rooftop with the little mics that we have, right? It's not going to sound like in studio where we tell them everybody where we're at. Clearly, we cannot take the professional equipment that we have in the studio with us. People will understand that, and you're going to come up as most genuine, right? So I think there's a lot of fear out there than, because we're thinking about publishing this professional looking sounding thing that then we have to avoid and use these tools to mask the production that we have in hand at the time. It's okay. Address it head on. Be like, hey guys, guess what? If you guys support the channel or if you guys support the podcast, we're going to be able to get better microphones, right?
Yeah, 100%.
But, I think there's many ways that, we can just detach from that and just be very authentic. And at the end of the day, the people that consume your content, that listen to your message are going to understand 100% of the way. I think, and I bring this back to probably our most consumed episodes. Couple things there. Shorter episode, but at the same time, we addressed from the very beginning that was not recording in studio. And it was after an event. It was at about 11 p.m. And we came to the car after the event exhausted. And we're like, we haven't recorded an episode today, and we said that we're going to record it. And we record it from our phone. I don't know if you remember this. We're in the parking lot, and we're recording, passing back and forth, and that's the episode that got published that day. And because of what we had to share was so important, people listen to the whole thing, right?
Yeah, quality of the message over quality of the production.
So
yeah, I mean, don't neglect it. I will say, again, put yourself in a decent situation. Like we got ourselves in a car. It's like, well, the car is a quieter environment than where we were.
Yeah.
And then the phone, everybody carries a phone nowadays, right? Is a great tool. You just put the recording memos in there and you put it close to your mouth and it will record pretty decently. But I really like what you're saying, right? Because a lot of people, you know, they try to make up for it by over editing, and usually over editing will lead to less quality at the end of the day, right? And I like the fact, you know, that you're being authentic, you're being honest with the people, and it also sets the context, right? Where you're like, hey, look, today we're not in the best place, we don't have the best technology, so there might be a little bit of a background noise, but we still want to deliver this message to you, right? I always say what doesn't get said creates distance, right? It's now one of my favorite things, and I use it a lot in my personal life when talking to people, right, about maybe problems and challenges. And it's the same, you're having a relationship with your audience. If you don't mention anything and they start hearing all this noise, like it doesn't sound good, maybe in the back of their head, they're going to be like, why does it sound so bad, right? But if you address that at the very beginning, because you know they will have those concerns, right? It's just like when you're selling something, it's like address their concerns up front, right? It's like, hey, look, I know that you may be thinking this is a little bit expensive. Wow, how does he know? He's in my head. It's the same with this. Hey, I know you might be thinking it's going to sound a little bit bad. Well, you're right, because we're not recording in the same place as we usually do. So great tip. That's so good. That's so good.
Epic fifth moment.
Yeah, you cracked my knuckles and everything.
So strong. All right, guys. Well, there's an end note here. Do you want to say that as we wrap up the episode?
Yeah, a little bit. So I put here the editor's bandwidth equals quality, right? If you are giving your editor a lot of stats, right? Like edit this, like often, like very high volume, right? Where they don't really have enough time to edit, with
very
intention.
High volume with very high expectations.
Yeah, and they don't have the time and the bandwidth to put the intention into some videos. Some of the editing is just gonna, go through, because the editing process does take time, right? Like consuming the material, like understanding the message, structuring the video. Then, if you gotta add effects and stuff like this, keyframe, like it does take time. And a lot of people sometimes don't understand the process and they have these high expectations, but then the expectations don't match the time that actually takes to edit some of these things. So, again, it depends obviously on your own personal strategy. If you want volume with less quality, cool, go ahead, right? There's plenty of tools that can help with that. Editors that can do, those very specific jobs. But if you want quality,
I wouldn't say like less quality. Maybe like, because it could still be quality content. And again, we can.
Yeah, there's a long topic. But what I'm saying is like, you gotta understand bandwidth when it comes to creating quality content, and also for creativity, right? If you want your editor to be creative with a specific type of content, you're gonna have to give them some sort of bandwidth. And a great example of this actually is the guy that does the CEO. I forgot.
Diary of a CEO.
Diary of a CEO, right? Steve something. I forgot his last name right now. But the guy that does the Diary of a CEO, he went and he hired somebody for doing the trailers of his podcast.
Just the
right?
trailers.
Just the trailers. And then he hired a second person. I think he has two people, I heard in an episode, that are doing just that. And they have like a week to turn around just that. And the reason being is because he wants to give them the bandwidth, right? To create something special, to create something unique and specialize in a very specific thing, rather than, hey, create me a trailer and then also create me X amount of clips for this, because now they're going to have less bandwidth for each specific thing, right? We went to Funnel Hacking Live a couple of years ago where Dan Henry talked about the focus pie, right? If you have a full pie, it's just one piece, and that represents your focus, and you can put all that into one task, probably is going to be better, right?
Yeah.
Than if you split your focus in multiple tasks that you have to do which is kind of like where I feel we are right now a little bit in the business, right? We have our focus spread out in like a lot of things too. And it feels like you can put a little bit less intention in things. So again, see it from the point of view. Am I delegating maybe too many things on the creative side of things for my editors when they're creating? Am I creating way too much and I have way too high expectations for the bandwidth that the people I'm working with may have, right? I think those are, again, up to you, very unique scenarios probably compared to everybody else. So I think those are good questions for you to reflect on as you move on to try to create, like Jon said, killer content.
Yeah. I think, obviously everybody's journey is different, right? I personally think that we will never, ever have like one full pie forever and ever.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
It's going to be split in different things. So, make sure that you're accounting the time and the resources that takes you to do that. If you are the one editing, right? Like a rule of thumb, for example, could be like for a 1 hour episode, I'll count at least for 2 hours of production minimum, right? To at least like see the footage, probably more, right? So a lot of people don't account for that kind of stuff. And obviously if you have the resources, vet your editors, be like, what's the work that they've done? What's the type of episodes that they've edited? Now that there's, a trailer aspect to it. There's an audio aspect to it. And you can ask the right questions in order to go work with them. So I think I like the episode today. We're going to leave the next 4 for the next episode. And then on that note, guys, if you have any questions on any of these, specifically on podcasting, let us know on social media at the Biz Bros Go. You can also go to You can also go to contentprofit.com, check the episodes there, or you can also go to bizbros.co, bizbros.co, and you can find a call link in there. Jump on if you have any questions, and we're happy to assist you with anything that you have. With that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning to the Contents Profit podcast. Go ahead and follow the show in your favorite podcasting platform and on social media at Biz Bros Go.
That is right. If today's episode to help you create killer content, please don't forget to share and leave a 5-star review. See ya.
Bye, guys.